What's going on, everybody? Man, Louie T here with a brand new installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Hope this Wednesday, what is this, Wednesday or Tuesday? Tuesday afternoon is treating you well. We're getting into the latter stages of the NFL offseason, and things are getting interesting. Minicamp is upon us. Players are holding out, making their demands known, and it's amazing to see some of the names that find themselves on this list. You don't think that they should be in this position, but yet here we are. So you've got guys getting cut this late into the offseason, which is ridiculous. You've got Aaron Rodgers signing a deal to show up to the Steelers' mandatory minis. So we've got all kinds of news that we're going to dive into today. You're locked into the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 508th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Hope all is well in your neck of the woods on this Tuesday afternoon as mandatory mini camps take place all around the National Football League. Before we get to anything NFL related, let's knock down a couple of non sequiturs, if you will. First things first, NBA Finals series knotted up at 1 as it heads back to Indiana. Epic Game 1 comeback by the Pacers. What's new? Tyrese Halliburton continues to have one of the greatest NBA playoff runs we've ever seen. I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day, and we were looking at these finals from two different perspectives and lenses. I said that in order for Tyrese Halliburton's run to be etched into our memory banks and go down as one of the greatest to ever happen, they have to win the championship. If they don't complete the cipher and they fall short, it's a nice story, but people will forget very quickly because it didn't amount to a championship. What he's doing, we've never seen before. We've seen guys hit shots, here and there. He's doing it in every series. He hasn't missed a game-winning shot or a shot to tie the entire playoffs. He's 5 for 5. We've never seen anything like this. You're getting to the point now where you get into a situation where the Pacers are up 1, or down 1, or the game is tied, or down 2 for that matter. And you just expect him to make the shot now. At this point, I'm double teaming him in those situations. He's not going to beat me. Someone else is going to have to do it, right? It's gotten to that point now. Now there's a conversation as to whether he is a superstar or not. No, he's not a superstar. But again, you want to change the narrative, win a championship. No one had the Pacers in the NBA Finals this year. This is insane what they're doing right now. And so that was my perspective. And then my buddy's perspective was that of these two teams being in the finals has a chance to bring back the team in the NBA, not the super team, but just the team overall. The notion that the sum of the parts is greater than having 2 or 3 guys that carry you to a championship. I understand where he's coming from, but because the Pacers don't have a superstar, right? They got a bunch of guys collectively that come together, play well, make timely shots. Like at the end of the game, it could be Nembhard that gets you. I mean, and that game 1, that step back he hit at the, end of the fourth quarter, I didn't even know he could do that. He hit him with the Kyrie Irving step back buckets. And I'm like, Shit, you could do that. I didn't even know he had that in his game. I didn't know that was even in his arsenal. And it could be anybody. It could be Nembhard. It could be Siakam. It could be obviously Halliburton. It could be and your boy. Man, I don't know why I can't think of his name. I can see his face. But the dude that came from the Celtics, he's been clutch, defending, hitting threes, timely threes. Like you can get it from anywhere with the Pacers. With I beg to differ because with the Thunder, it's still the Shea, it's still SGA's show. He's still going to shoot the ball 30 times a game. Nobody on the Pacers is shooting the ball 30 times in a game. Nobody on the Pacers is getting to the free throw line, 15, 16 times in a game. It's still SGA's show, and they go as he goes. So I don't necessarily like they're a team. OKC is a team, but they're extremely deep. But it's still a team led by a superstar in SGA. So I still feel like it's Oklahoma City's series to win, and I expect them to win. What the Pacers effectively did in game one by stealing it is they made it a series. Now I think they have a shot to win. Here's what can't happen. They can't go home and lose both games 3 and 4. They just have to win one of the 2 games at home. That's it. All they've done is effectively bought themselves an opportunity to go home and not need to win both games at home to survive. They just have to split at home because they've been such a good road team in the postseason that if they can just win one of the 2 games in Indiana, they're going to have a legitimate shot to win this series. You win one of the 2 games in Indiana, you can win this series in 6 if you're Indiana. They've got the poise and the moxie to go on the road in game 5 or 7 and win. So just win one of these 2 games. The best thing they could do is just take care of business in game 3. They've been awful in game 3s this postseason. I don't think they've won a game 3, as a matter of fact. If I'm not mistaken, I think they've lost game 3 in all 3 series leading up to the NBA Finals. So I'm not too confident in their ability to go home and get it done in game 3, but I think they can bounce back in game 4. But you can't fall down 3-1 in this series if you're the Indiana Pacers. You can't do that. So we'll see what they do in game 3. That's a pretty big game, I think. In my estimation, they go home and win game 3. Now you're back to where you were after game 1. You're playing with house money because you don't have to win game 4 if you win game 3. Be nice to, but you don't have to. You lose game 3, then you have to win game 4. The series is over. Now you've you've defaulted back to not winning game 1, essentially coming home and winning game 3 and then losing game 4. You're back to 3-1 and they can win the series and close it out in 5 at home. You don't want to put yourself in that position. So you have to win one of those 2 games on the road. We'll see what they do. They've got to shoot better. I expect them to shoot better at home, and we'll see if they can get it done when they head back to Indiana. So Naismith, thank you, Casper the Barbarian. Naismith has been huge for them, or Neesmith. Anybody can hurt you on that team late in ball games. You just don't know where it's going to come from, right? Hell, Obi Toppin hit some big shots in game 1. Obviously, he hit 5 threes. So I think it has a chance to be a really good series. A lot of people weren't interested until the game 1 fireworks. Then game 2 looked like what we thought game 1 was going to look like. We need another good game in game 3 to salvage the interest level, because if it's another blowout and it's an OKC blowout, if it's an Indiana blowout, okay, we got a series. If it's an OKC blowout, people are going to lose interest. So hopefully we get a good game in game 3 on Wednesday night, but we shall see. So I wanted to talk briefly about, you know what? I'm not going to bore you guys with that because a lot of y'all don't even know what the hell I'm talking about. So just going to move on. Let's talk NFL. So let's talk about some vets, man. And it's just crazy looking at the situation that some of these NFL vets find themselves in. I got to imagine, shout out to my guy, Inspector Deck, one of the classic verses of all time. But I imagine NFL fans feel like Inspector Deck did back in '93 when they say, The NFL is hard for all of us, right? The NFL is very rough for all of us. Or I should say, the NFL is tough for all of us. Life as an NFL vet shouldn't be so rough. NFL game is tough for all of us. Life as an NFL vet shouldn't be so rough. Guys that have put in real work in this league have established themselves as some of the best players on their respective ball clubs can't get to the bag. Again, eventually it'll happen. But the fact that we're here with some of these guys, some of them are very surprising. Some of them are very surprising that we're going to talk about here in a second. And then one guy in particular is not even a vet. He hasn't even played the NFL down yet, and he's not participating in his team's mandatory minicamp. So with that said, let's head over to the gym dropping session, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T double E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. This NFL game is tough for all of us. Life as a vet shouldn't be so rough. Let's talk about why it's so rough for these NFL players, man. These vets. So let's start with minicamp, mandatory minicamp no-shows. We've got a plethora of them. 2 in Miami. Let's start there. So no Jalen Ramsey, who, quote, is staying away, close quote, from the Miami Dolphins until the situation is resolved. This man was counting down the days until June 1st when he thought a resolution to his situation was going to happen, whether it was the Dolphins were going to release him to save themselves some money or they were going to trade him. He just thought that a resolution was going to be had by June 1st. He was wrong. And I said this literally 3 days before, as he was counting down on social media. I said, you know, they could just eat the money because they want to trade you, right? Like, they're not just going to cut you and not get something for you. You're worth something to them. And if they have to eat some money in order to get some draft capital, they're going to do that. He just didn't see it that way. He thought, oh, they want to save this money. They're going to cut me. And not exactly. Now he's still there and he's frustrated. There will be some sort of resolution there because he's not going to play in Miami this year, clearly. And I still think his destination, is more likely than not going to be the Los Angeles Rams. But for the time being, Jalen Ramsey, still a Dolphin, not at camp. It's a distraction. Did you see their head coach, Mike McDaniel, having to answer questions about it? And he said, they asked him, how does it make him feel? He's like, I really don't, it doesn't matter. I don't give a shit how I feel. Right. He's not happy right now. He's miserable having to deal with this shit. Then on top of that, Jonnu Smith, Pro Bowl tight end for the Dolphins a season ago, who signed a 2-year, let's call it $14 million deal, something along those lines. Last year, feels like he's outperformed his contract, which he has because he's gone to the pro. He went to the Pro Bowl last year, played really well for them. Wants some real money. He wants some guarantees in this final year of his contract. So remember, there was conversations about whether he was going to be dealt. The Steelers were, temporarily interested. Nothing came of it. Remember, anybody that seemed like any teams that had interest in tight ends, the Steelers, for whatever reason, I'm not really sure why the Steelers name kept coming up, because it feels like the Steelers have been drafting tight ends for the last, 2-3 years in the draft, but that's nor here nor there. I know they had Darnell Washington. They still have Pat Freiermuth. It feels like they got tight ends. I don't know why their name would keep coming up, but felt like when we were talking about Kyle Pitts, Steelers' name came up. Jonnu Smith, Steelers' name came up, but nothing has come of it. And he's still a Miami Dolphin. He still wants to be paid. The Dolphins are like, bro, you got another year on your deal. Chill. And he's like, no, I made the Pro Bowl last year. I need to get what's mine. Bless me, please. And they're like, yeah, I don't know about that. And he's like, well, I'm just going to sit out of this mandatory mini. They're like, cool. Do what you got to do. So Dolphins have 2 players out of mandatory minis. Speaking of teams with 2 players not participating in mandatory minis, let's go to Cincinnati. Boy, are they a shit franchise. Man, if I were an NFL veteran, I wouldn't even consider Cincinnati if I have options, obviously. If I don't, and they're the only team willing to pay me, Cincinnati it is. But if I have options and all things are equal, I'm not going to Cincinnati. I'm not choosing the Bengals. They don't do right by their players. You have to be a superstar or damn near close to it. If not for Joe Burrow pretty much vouching for and saying, you better bring back my guy, T. Higgins, they would have jerked around T. Higgins as well. Only because the star quarterback said, I'll take less, but you better bring my guy back, right? You got to be in a high position like Jamar Chase or Joe Burrow to get paid out there, or else they're just going to jerk you around. We'll talk about Jermaine Pratt and the situation with him. That was some bullshit, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. But no one else has a first-round rookie who is not participating, who hasn't participated in any of the team activities this offseason, except for the Cincinnati Bengals. Shamar Stewart still has not signed his first-round contract, still has not participated in a single Bengals offseason activity to date, and will not participate in anything until he gets his deal. And he actually addressed the media today, and he clapped back at the Cincinnati Bengals organization, pretty much saying that they don't want to win. They just want to be right. What they're doing to me is wrong. What they're doing to Trey Hendrickson is wrong. And I'm paraphrasing here, but this is essentially what he said. What they're doing to Trey Hendrickson is wrong. What they're doing to me is wrong. They don't want to win. They just want to be right. That's essentially what he said today. You got a rookie coming in and shitting on you who hasn't even played a single down. This is the state of the Cincinnati Bengals right now. It is a shit franchise in terms of how they do business. I'm going to talk about that a little bit and expound upon that with the Jermaine Pratt situation. But I just talked about Shamar Stewart, a rookie first-round pick who's not participating, who hasn't participated. So he's in the building. He's just not going to do anything physically. So he's not participating in the mandatory minis. But he's not in a position to be, I don't know if because he hasn't signed a deal, that he's a part of the NFL Players Association. So I don't know if he could technically be fined for not showing up because he's not technically under contract. But he is showing up, and he's just not going to participate, right? Meanwhile, Trey Hendrickson is under contract and does feel like he needs a pay raise. And I kind of felt like the Jermaine Pratt situation was a good sign for him potentially getting a new deal, but nothing has materialized nor surfaced. And so obviously he is still away from the team right now, not showing up at mandatory minis, waiting for a new deal or at least some contract negotiations and discussions, which haven't happened, in his words, in quite some time now. So the Bengals have 2 guys out of mandatory minis. One guy not in attendance at all in Trey Hendrickson as that saga continues to play out. And one rookie in the building but not participating in Shamar Stewart. So that situation continues to be a mess out in Cincinnati. It seems like every year they've got some type of drama going on. Last year it was the Jamar Chase situation where he didn't practice until literally like 2 days before their first game against New England. And you want to know why? They lost to one of the worst teams in football in week 1 at home and only scored 10 points. You want to know why? Because of stupid shit like that, right? A situation that easily could have been resolved. And instead, they made it a much bigger mess than it needed to be, right? So, and the T. Higgins situation last year, but I digress. You moved to Pittsburgh. I'm shocked that we're here with TJ Watt. I really, truly am, because the Steelers don't usually engage in activity this way. They usually take care of their guys before it even gets to this point. You rarely hear the Steelers with one of their guys that is going to be a lifer. TJ Watt is a Steelers lifer. He's going to be Cam Hayward, right? Like Cam Hayward, what is he, 36 or 7 years old? He just signed an extension a year or two ago. Like he's going to finish his career as a Pittsburgh Steeler. And so many before him have done the same thing, right? You can go all the way back to that Troy Polamalu era where they took care of all of those guys and made sure that they didn't wear another uniform, right? This feels like the path that TJ Watt is heading down, and none of us expect him to wear another uniform, at least not anytime soon. The deal is going to get done. I'm just shocked that we're here because the Steelers usually don't allow situations to get to this point with guys that they respect and know that they need within the ranks of their organization, right? We just usually don't get to this point with them. So to have TJ Watt, who, about 2 months ago, posted a picture of him with a peace sign, in a Steelers uniform, which was cryptic in nature, but we all took it as he's saying peace to the Steelers. I'm out. I'm out of here. But obviously just frustrated, right? Just posting that to let them know he's not happy, let the fan base know, yeah, situation's not amicable right now. Something I thought resolution would be already reached in this situation, to be honest with you. Shocked. It hasn't happened. He's slated to lose over $100,000 over the next 3 days if he is not to show up at Steelers minicamp. There's no doubt he's not showing up unless there's a deal intact. And so that's probably the most surprising of all of the minicamp no-shows. And then there's Terry McLaurin in Washington, another guy that you would have thought would have had a deal by now, but I'm not as surprised because, again, just knowing where Adam Peters, the Commanders' general manager, came from and how business was done in San Francisco, this is kind of the way that they've done business, right? You just look at last year and Sam Cosmi's deal that happened on September 4th. You look at what the 49ers have historically done contractually with their players. It's usually not until July, August, or September where those deals get done. So I'm not surprised that the Terry McLaurin deal has not gotten done yet. Not surprised that he's not at mandatory minicamp. But it is another NFL veteran that has proven his worth to his organization. Same can be said for Trey Hendrickson and TJ Watt that have not been paid. Again, life as an NFL vet shouldn't be so rough, but it is for some of these guys trying to get to the bag. So really, really interesting situations with all those players that are not participating in their team's respective mandatory minicamps. Some guys that are in attendance at their team's mandatory minicamps. To a lesser degree, Marshawn Lattimore and Laramie Tunzel of the Commanders, both players were not at any of the OTAs. Very few for Laramie Tunzel, but none for Marshawn Lattimore. Both were in attendance at the mandatory minicamp, which was to be expected. There was no holdout or no real contractual issues with either one of them. However, Kirk Cousins is a different story. He was a guy that there were trade rumors swirling, would he end up being a Pittsburgh Steeler? Obviously, the Steelers, they had a handshake agreement with Aaron Rodgers. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. But Rodgers has since signed, and thus he is at mandatory minicamp, is Aaron Rodgers. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But Kirk Cousins also is at mandatory minicamp for the Atlanta Falcons. He released a statement today, spoke to the media and said, hey, we're now moving forward to try and be the best quarterback room we can be for the Atlanta Falcons in 2025. So he understands his fate now. He is locked into this Falcons roster. They're not going to trade him unless a deal comes about. And you never know what happens in training camp for a team, but they're not going to move him. More likely than not, they're not cutting him. Obviously, they've made that abundantly clear, which they should not because of the contractual situation and the cap money and all of that, like the dead cap. There's no benefit to getting rid of Kirk Cousins unless it's via trade. And so doesn't seem like that's going to take place. Thus, he is stuck in Atlanta behind Michael Penix Jr. and Kirk Cousins now looking to make the best of his situation. So that is really all when it comes to NFL mini camps. These are all, fluid situations that could change and be altered here. But again, usually the deadline to get a deal done is before mandatory minicamps, not during it, right? Like once you're not there at the start, it's already a distraction. The likelihood is the timeline doesn't move up now that it's already begun and you're not there. We just move forward. And now you turn your attention to mid-July before training camp for all of these players to try and get a deal done. And I surmise that in the case of a TJ Watt and a Terry McLaurin in particular, that deals are reached with those two players in particular before the start of training camp. I can't speak for the rest of these guys. Trey Hendrickson, that Cincinnati Bengals organization is a piece of work. And so I don't know if he'll get anything, done with them. Jalen Ramsey, that might be a late summer transaction when he finds a new home, finding somewhere for him to land as far as a trade is concerned. And the Shamar Stewart situation is very intriguing because I'm still trying to figure out what this language is that is such a holdup. I mean, these NFL rookie contracts are now cookie cutter, they're standard. I don't understand how offset language or this or that is important enough to put you in a position where you can't get a guy out there that feels like it is important for him to have his contract before he performs. I don't understand why it's so hard to get it done. It's not like the money is the issue here. It's literally language. And I get it. Language can mean a lot in situations. If a guy's not performing, but he wants X, Y, Z, I get that language can be, a big factor as to what gets done with the deal. But at some point, you just got to say, all right, dude, let's just get you in here, man. The holdup there is just it's incredible with the Cincinnati Bengals, but I digress. So let's get to our next segment, and that is social media maneuvers. I'm a midday marauder. Y'all know what it is. If you're out there and you want your comment read on the air, you know how this works. For those of you who do not know how this works, what you can do is use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. If it is pertinent and time permits, we'll get to your comment. We'll read and react to it. But I can't assure you that we'll have time to get to comments in the comment section, or how many we'll have time to get to. To ensure that your comment is read, use the super chat function, and that not only allows your comment to be shown on the screen and read and reacted to, and ensures that happens. It's mandatory, just like this mini camp we're talking about. But it also allows you to jump straight to the front of the line to do so. So with that said, I'll start this segment off by talking about a couple of situations that have arisen. And I want to start by talking about a few in case you missed it. So I was going to have in case you missed it today because I was going to do this podcast last night. I decided to wait because I wanted to see how minicamp was going to turn out, who was going to show up, who wasn't going to show up. And so instead of going the in case you missed it route, we'll just talk about a few of these topics, and I'll save in case you missed it for a podcast maybe down the road. Because it has been a little while since we've chopped it up. So you may have missed some things. So this will be a pseudo in case you missed it. So let's talk about it. The Packers released cornerback Jair Alexander after not being able to come to terms on a restructured contract for him. So again, this NFL game is tough for all of us. Life as a vet shouldn't be so rough. Jair Alexander has been a corner that has been very good in this league when healthy. The problem is he's never healthy. To that degree, his former team president in Green Bay said the following: Jair Alexander not being here is something that we're already used to. Ouch. He says, we'll be fine without Jair Alexander on the field. It's something we're already used to. Ouch. But that just goes to show you that he's rarely healthy. So I'm not the biggest Alexander fan anyway, to be honest with you. He's a very talented corner, no doubt about it. But injuries and inconsistent play. I think he's one of these guys that thinks he's better than what he truly is. What I can say is that he takes the football away. You know, you make a mistake around Jair Alexander, you pay for that mistake. You don't get a second opportunity if you make a mistake in his general vicinity. But he gets cooked a lot by top tier NFL, wide receivers. And so I just don't buy the hype surrounding him. And the Packers came at him with a deal that didn't really suit what he felt like his talent suggested he should be paid. And so he scoffed at the restructured deal that the Packers were offering him. They tried to move him. The Bills inquired about trading for Jair Alexander, but the talks never got past the infant stages. There was never any real compensation discussed. And thus, they got to a point where they didn't feel like the two sides could reach an agreement. And they just said, we are used to playing without him. Let's just move on. Let's wash our hands and move on from Jair Alexander. So you don't see this very often, but at this time of the offseason, a top-notch, still relatively young, NFL starting caliber corner, borderline number one, is available in June. And this is not a post-June 1 cut where you expected it to happen and you could have signed him back in March. This kind of just came out of nowhere. And I told you this was a situation like 2 months ago. I said, the Jair Alexander situation in Green Bay is one to monitor. Don't know if he's going to end up staying in Green Bay, which is what I thought ultimately was going to happen, or if he gets traded or flat out released. Of the three options, release seemed like the least likely to occur. Yet, here we are in June, when all the money has essentially dried up. Now, some teams still have some cap space to work with, but a lot of the money is dried up. And now here's Jair Alexander hitting the free agent market. The Bills obviously were interested in trading for him. So that's definitely a landing destination. I think the Philadelphia Eagles make a ton of sense. It feels like a move that they would try to make, being that their cornerback position, you could argue, is the weakest part of their team right now. Wouldn't shock me if he ended up in Philadelphia either. That's another place that makes a ton of sense for him. So we'll see where Jair Alexander, look, most teams could use cornerback help. That's one of those positions where you can never have enough, right? So we'll see where Jair Alexander ends up, but it won't be with the Green Bay Packers, obviously. In case you missed it, Chris Godwin, Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver who is coming off of major surgery, obviously hurt himself early in the year, like week 6 or 7, out for the season, but was up for a contract this offseason and had options. Signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to return on a deal that was going to pay him, I think it was like a 3-year, $66 million deal that he signed this offseason to remain in Tampa Bay before free agency started. I think it was the day before free agency actually officially started. So that tampering period I think it was the day before the tampering period started, so that he could not, engage in contracts or contact with other teams. It could have either been that or the official start of free agency. Either way, it had to be, I think, the day before actual start of free agency, because reportedly, Chris Godwin turned down upwards of $30 million a year from the New England Patriots to go back to the Bucs for $22 million a year. One, that's loyalty. Two, how bad of an organization do you have to be viewed as to have receivers and players turning down your money left and right? We saw last year Brandon Ayuk, who the Patriots were prepared to make one of the highest paid wide receivers in the NFL. Saw Brandon Ayuk turn down the opportunity to go to New England. This year, Chris Godwin was in a position to be a top 7 paid wide receiver in the league at roughly $30 million a year, coming off of an injury, no less. And he's like, yeah, New England, thanks, but no thanks. I think I'll just go back to Tampa. And that could have been more of a Tampa thing, like, this is home for me. This is where I want to be. This is where I'm comfortable. This is where my family's comfortable. It could have been more of that and less of, I don't want to go to New England, but $30 million a year versus $22 million a year. You do the math over a 3-year span. 3 times 8 is $24 million difference in a contract, right? You're talking about the difference between 3 years 66 and 3 years 90, which also comes with more guaranteed money. We're talking about a significant amount of money that Chris Godwin turned down, essentially to go back to Tampa, but maybe even more so to stay away from New England. Ouch. We saw the kind of money the Patriots were throwing around in free agency, so I don't dismiss this as, hearsay and, just some nonsense that's being thrown out there. This is probably legit. We've seen what the Patriots were throwing around in terms of money this offseason to some of the players that they were able to sign. So it's not out of the realm of possibility, and it's not far-fetched to think that they were looking for, and remember, this was before Stephon Diggs signed on board with them. I think they did that more as a backup plan than, speaking of Stephon Diggs, he is at mandatory minicamp after missing the OTAs, and he showed up at like some of the final practices at phase 3 of OTAs. So he's at mandatory mini for anyone that was wondering, but that's a significant amount of money that Godwin turned down to return to Tampa Bay, but maybe more so to stay away from New England. Interesting stuff. In case you missed it, the Bengals to cut linebacker Jermaine Pratt saves the team roughly $5.6 million. And in my mind, when I first saw this hit, this is their leading tackler. He's one of the captains of the team, middle linebacker, green dot on the helmet, all of that good stuff. I always think about that AFC Championship game from a couple seasons ago when the Bengals lost to the Chiefs in regulation. The game was going to go to overtime, right? Mahomes is going out of bounds. He's pushed by Joseph Osai, then a rookie out of Texas. 15-yard penalty is attached to the end of the run, puts them in field goal range. And, of course, the field goal is made, and they go on to the Super Bowl, go on to win the Super Bowl, right? That was 2 years ago. And Pratt walking into the locker room, snapping on Joseph Osai, I would just remember thinking to myself, that's a man who knows that was his best shot to win a Super Bowl, and he may not get another opportunity to do it in Cincinnati because contract's about to be up. He's a free agent, might not be back, and you just effed up my one shot here to get it done. And it's hard to win a Super Bowl, as we know, in this league. And your best shot to get to a Super Bowl is if you got one of them ones at quarterback, which the Bengals do. And there's only like 5 of those dudes that exist in the league. And if your quarterback isn't one of them, the road to the Super Bowl is that much tougher. You've got to have an ironclad roster around said quarterback in order to win a Super Bowl. See the Philadelphia Eagles. So at the end of the day, well, school's almost over, mama. Go ahead and watch TV. Daddy's working. So you look at the situation and you fast forward to present day, and Jermaine Pratt is released in June, mind you, right? This is something the Bengals knew that they could possibly be looking to do. And if you're a player in the NFL, once again, I go back to the theme of today's show. This NFL game is tough for all of us. Life as a vet shouldn't be so rough. All NFL veterans ever ask is full transparency. And if you're going to cut me, do it in a manner that allows me to earn the most money that I can. That's all NFL veterans ever ask. So Pratt gets cut in June, where he's making over $5 million. Again, I just talked about this with Jair Alexander. Somebody's going to find the money for Jair Alexander, right? Cornerback is a premium position. Linebacker, however, is not. So when the money was out here free flowing, when the teams like the New England Patriots were giving away money to guys, I think Robert Spillane, who I actually really like, but I think Robert Spillane, and I don't get me the line, but I think he signed like a 3-year, $33 million contract. That's a lot of money for Robert Spillane. Let me look it up. I don't want to be just making up shit. But I know he got a pretty significant deal because that's when the money was out here being thrown around like monopoly money. Let's see what Robert Spillane, what his contract looked like. Yeah, damn, I'm good. 3 years, $33 million. I'm because that's one of my guys. I like Robert Spillane. But Robert Spillane, I don't know if he's worth no damn $11 million per year. Love me some Robert Spillane, though. But that's the kind of money you can get in March when there's a lot of it available. You ain't getting a 3-year, $33 million contract. And if in the case of Jermaine Pratt, that ain't what he's looking for. I just want my 2-year, $10 million. I just want my $5 million that I was supposed to make this year. You ain't getting that in June, bro. You might get a 1-year, $5 million contract from someone. You might get that. But you're desperate now. And everybody knows you're desperate. You're just looking for work now. You want to be on an NFL roster. So I can come out here and say, hey, I got you for a 1-year, $4 million deal. Take it or leave it. Nobody else is offering you that. So you could take it, or you could play hardball and wait to see if something else arises. And guess what? If you don't take my $4 million deal now, if I have to circle back and you're still available, it might be 3.5 the next time I see you. So he's being put in a tough spot. That's bullshit, by the way. And I've talked about this already, right? That NFL team, and this is why I'm always on the side of the players, always. Because when players outperform their contract, it's taboo in the media or in the public eye. It's in the public court of public opinion. It's taboo for a player to want to go get his, right? Like what Jonnu Smith is doing. I signed a 2-year, $14 million deal. I've outperformed that by going to the Pro Bowl last year. I was one of your best players on offense last season. I feel like I should be paid more, right? I've outperformed my contract. I don't have a problem with a player doing that because when a team sees fit, this is the type of shit that they can do, right? They can decide, you know what? You haven't lived up to our expectations, or we just want to create some cap space. Your contract looks like one that can help us do that. But instead of us doing right by the player and cutting ties with him, because they could have, even if they save more money by cutting him post June 1, they could have made him a post June 1 designation cut and still allowed the man to hit free agency when the money was out there. But they decided, nah, we'll hold on to him. Doesn't matter what he wants. And now they cut him in June. And now he's free to find a new team, but now the money's dried up. So in a situation where Jermaine Pratt could have signed a 2-year, $16 million deal, which would have been a pay raise for him. This is a guy that's, again, one of the leading tacklers on this Bengals roster, a team captain, a guy that's still a really good football player. He could have gotten maybe a little bit more in an inflated market. Now that market is dried up, and now he's got to go out here and fight for his $5 million that he was supposed to get this year, his 5.5. We'll see what happens, but again, that's bullshit on the part of the Cincinnati Bengals. But this is the contractual imbalance that exists in the NFL. No other sport does this exist. You can't get away with this type of shit in baseball because the contracts are fully guaranteed. You can't get away with this type of shit in the NBA. Contracts are fully guaranteed. This is the only sport where a team, a franchise can at any point decide if it's fiscally smart for them, I can dump you and your contract right now, and there's no penalty to us. But yet, if the shoe's on the other foot, I'm outperforming the contract, as in the case with Trey Hendrickson, where I've got the most sacks in the NFL over the last 2 seasons. The next closest guy is 4.5 sacks behind me. I've got 35 sacks over the last 2 seasons. TJ Watt is the next closest man at 30.5 sacks. I've got the most sacks over the last 2 seasons by 4 sacks, clear of the next guy on the list. And you don't even want to talk to me. Yet, had I had 7 sacks over the last 2 seasons and my 20 whatever million dollars was sitting out there and you wanted out, you would just dump me on the side of the road like yesterday's garbage. That's the problem with the NFL. And I don't know how you fix it, because the owners are never going to sign a CBA that relinquishes that power. They're never giving that up. That's their leverage, and they're never going to give that up. But it sucks. And so players like Jair Alexander and Jermaine Pratt find themselves looking for work at this time of the year where there's not a ton of money available. You know, Alexander, like I said, plays a premium position. Someone will ante up and pay him solid money to come in, even if it's a 1-year deal. For Pratt, on the other hand, playing a position that most people don't really see the value in overspending at, he'll be lucky if he gets a 1-year, $5 million deal. I think he may be able to conjure that up, right? He may be able to piece together a 1-year, $5 million deal with incentives, or a 1-year, $4 million deal and with incentives. If he, you know, makes a certain amount of tackles or he plays in a certain amount of games, he could get to 5.5, which is what he was slated to make this year. But that sucks to have to put yourself to be put in a position to have to do that, right? But that's the Cincinnati Bengal way, right? Which is why if I had an option, I wouldn't want to go there. I would not want to go there. But I also wanted to talk about this part of that situation. I thought that them cutting Jermaine Pratt, and it may actually turn out to be exactly this, was in an effort to get something done with Trey Hendrickson, right? They're starting to, you know, align all of their ducks, start to count all of their nickels, dimes, quarters, dollars, etc., and starting to stack up all of their bread to get in a position to offer Trey Hendrickson the extension that makes all parties involved happy here. So far, nothing has transpired. But when I heard that Jermaine Pratt was being cut, the first thing I thought of was they want to get this done before mandatory minicamp. Clearly, I was wrong, but it doesn't mean that this will help them get it done before training camp, which is ultimately the real deadline for all of these players that are holding out of mandatory minis. Mandatory mini is cool. You would like to be there. The team would love to have you there, but you don't have to be there. Training camp is when you really start to feel the impact of a guy the stature of a Trey Hendrickson or TJ Watt or Terry McLaurin not being in camp. And so, to me, if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, cutting Jermaine Pratt saves you almost $6 million. You take that money and whatever you already had under the cap, and you start finding a way to negotiate a new deal with Trey Hendrickson. I think this is the start of that. I could be wrong, and they could just be penny pinching here, and they have no desire to give Trey Hendrickson a new deal. They're petty enough, as Shamar Stewart pointed out. They're petty enough. And you got to understand, some NFL organizations, their first priority isn't winning. It's the bottom line, right? Cincinnati is one of those organizations to me. Their first priority isn't winning. Their first priority is, how do we make money, right? That's how it used to be in Washington with Daniel Snyder. His first priority wasn't winning football games. His first priority was, how do I come out in the black and not the red? I'll overcharge for parking. I'll overcharge for concession because I got to find a way to come out and I don't give a shit who's filling up the stadium. Care if it's other teams' fans. As long as they're asses in seats, that's all I care about. I just care about my bottom line. There are NFL franchises that operate in that space. As a fan, it's sickening to watch. Cincinnati strikes me as one of those organizations. They really don't care about winning as much as some of the other franchises do. They care more about the bottom line. That's a tough existence as a fan. Being a part of a fan base of an organization who cares more about the bottom line than putting a winning product on the field. Because if you care about putting a winning product on the field, you try to minimize distractions. You try to nip some of these things in the bud. You're not always going to be able to protect yourself from a contract dispute with a player, right? They want this. You see the numbers that, and you just haven't been able to get to that middle ground. Eventually you'll get there, but you just haven't been able to. That's inevitable. It's going to happen. But if you can avoid that, which the Bengals never do, right? Just like the Cowboys, they never avoid those situations. Jerry Jones is one of those. He claims he wants to win, but I don't know if winning is more important than being America's team and being at the forefront of everyone's consciousness by having these conversations always crop up. There's always something to talk about with the Dallas Cowboys. And a lot of times it's never about what's on the field. If you really care about winning, you don't hire Brian Schottenheimer as your head coach. That's not a winning hire. That's a let's save some money and have a guy that I can control type of hire. That reeks of Jason Garrett, right? That reeks of someone that I can control, not have to pay a lot of money to, doesn't have any experience, so I don't have to pay him a lot of money so that I can make money. Having tours at the facility during the season, having your players there and seeing, fans walk around as if this is some sort of petting zoo, that's asinine. That's loser football. That's a guy extracting every cent out of his organization and putting money above winning, even though he tries to swear that it's the other way around. If it were, then guys like CeeDee Lamb wouldn't have to hold out the entire offseason into the preseason to the start of the regular season to get his money, which is what Michael Parsons is probably going to have to do as well. Guys like Ezekiel Elliott wouldn't have to go to Mexico and threaten to hold out right before the season starts to get his money, if that were the case. Dak Prescott wouldn't be the highest paid quarterback in the league if that were the case. But I digress. I really don't know if Trey Hendrickson is going to get his money or not. Felt like this Jermaine Pratt deal was a precursor to those conversations at least starting again, and maybe it is, but for the time being, right now, it's not. It's just another example of the power that NFL organizations have and can wield at any point they so choose. And this is another example of an organization putting a player in a tough spot that was very unnecessary, but doing it because they can, for lack of a better phrase. So I digress. Let's, one more. In case you missed it, Nick Chubb agrees to a 1-year, $5 million deal with the Texans. I think with incentives, it can get up to $5 million. Good for him. I really think he's got a chance to have a really strong bounce back year this season. I'm just glad he didn't end up in Dallas. That's one place I didn't want him to be, because we all know when Nick Chubb is healthy, he's one of the best running backs in the league. And we've all seen the workout videos. Working out is not the same as, running at a very high rate of speed and getting hit. And so the workout videos are cool, but we all know Nick Chubb is a dog. And I'm not just talking about the fact that he graduated from Georgia. He's a dog, and that he ended up playing for the Cleveland Browns. And I'm not talking about that everywhere he's been a dog. He's legitimately a dog. And so that's a really good spot for him. That 1-2 punch of him and Joe Mixon can really wear down NFL defenses if Chubb is right. And the good thing is he's not asked to be the bell cow there, right? Joe Mixon is still going to probably shoulder the burden there. And whatever Joe Mixon can't do, because, Mixon is, an NFL running back with some tread off the tires at this point of his career. And injuries do happen at the running back position. So you want depth there. And if anything were to happen, now you got Chubb backing him up that could take, the bulk of those carries should Mixon be out for a week or two. But the combination of those two guys, pretty significant if Chubb is back to the form pre-injury. So that's going to be interesting to watch. And remember, he came back last year, but he was just really not effective. So now he's probably fully healthy now. So this is going to be fun to watch. And then one more 1-year contract for a running back. Former Chargers running back J.K. Dobbins stays in the division to sign with the Denver Broncos on a 1-year contract. So the Broncos continue to bolster that running back group. They lose Javonte Williams, but they add a speedster in the draft, the running back out of UCF, and then turn around and add J.K. Dobbins. So the Broncos have a pretty full stable of backs now. We'll see how that sorts itself out. But Chubb, a couple of NFL veteran running backs, and Nick Chubb and J.K. Dobbins find homes. So, one more. We talked about guys that did show up to mandatory minicamp, and this has been a very quiet, under the radar conversation, but I have brought it up to you before. But Bills running back James Cook did in fact show up to Bills mandatory minicamp. I didn't know if he was going to show up or not, but it makes sense. He doesn't have the money to be holding out, right? Like, TJ Watt is looking for his 3rd NFL contract. Terry McLaurin is looking for his 3rd NFL contract, right? Trey Hendrickson is looking for his 3rd NFL contract. These guys are in a position to be able to hold out and incur fines and it not really impact them. They've made real NFL money already. And if you're a 1st-round pick in the league and you went in the top 15, especially the top 10, you are in a position to incur fines and be fine. Like, if Micah Parsons would have sat out, he would have been okay. He's made money on his first deal in the NFL, and he's making money off the field in endorsements, and he's making money with his contract with Bleacher Report. So he's got money. And if he wanted to sit out and make a statement to the Cowboys, he could have done that, and he would have been okay. James Cook is not a 1st-round pick. James Cook, I don't think, is a 2nd-round pick. I think James Cook is a 3rd or 4th-round pick. He is in no position right now financially. I want to speak on another man's money. I'm not counting that man's coin, but $100K to him feels a lot more impactful than $100K to a guy that's probably already amassed well over 40, 50, $60 million in their NFL careers, guaranteed money, right? So it hits a little bit different when you haven't made real money yet. So I just expected him to be there just off the strength of him just not having that kind of bread. He ain't got it like that yet. Whereas these other veterans absolutely are in a position where no one wants to give away money. No one's looking to give away $100,000. Right? You can come up with a lot of, creative ways, a lot more constructive ways to spend $100K. Trust me, these players would much rather keep that in their bank account. But if spending that $100K to send a message to the team that's ultimately going to land you in a position to earn another 70 or 80 million, you'll spend that $100K. That's a good investment. And it's a drop in the hat for those guys that already have it. If you're James Cook, not quite there yet. Not quite there yet. So, I digress. Let's get to the comment section. See what you guys have to say. Rosario Satara Pileski, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, "Hey LT, sent an email on June 7th about my channel, Let's Save Cinema Productions." So if you're out there right now, over 260 of you, and y'all know how I feel about the likes. It's 260 of you out there. We're close to that 3-to-1 ratio, viewers to likes. If you would so kindly as to hit the like button, I would greatly appreciate that. If you haven't already done so. And while you're at it, go ahead and sub up my guy Russ's channel, Let's Save Cinema Productions. Check him out, support a fellow member of the MOBB, and check out his content, man. He's doing big things over there. Check him out. He says, "I will release my 4th video soon. Let me know when you subscribe. Also wishing a happy summer of sun warmth to you and the mob squad." Matter of fact, I'm gonna do it right now while we on the stream together. I'm encouraging y'all to go do it, and I'm a walk it like I talk it. Walk it like I talk it. I'm about to go sub up the channel right now. So let's go to YouTube. And let's save cinema. And I'm subscribed. I'm in there, Russ. Let's Save Cinema Productions, everybody. Go sub him up. I just subbed up my guy, Russ. Y'all should do the same. Support the man as he continues his quest to save cinema. All right. And I'm going to check your content out too. When I sub up your channel, I definitely support by watching your content. So I'm going to sub up and I am going to support the movement, man. Summer of sun and warmth to you as well, Russ. And I look forward to chopping it up with you in the future, man. Continue to grind and put that 4th installment out, my man. All right. Barrett Downing, thank you for being a member for 45 months. Salute to you. My guy BD writes, "Do you see any moves coming? Respect to you." No, I don't see anything happening if you're talking about Commanders wise. I think what we've seen from them to this point is all you're going to see. I think the next move is getting Terry an extension. That is the next move. I think the roster, the way it is right now, won't be tinkered with until you get to camp. You have to first see what you have. I think they athletically like what they've added to the roster. I think they've gotten faster. I talked about that already. They've gotten deeper. I've talked about that already. So they want to now see what it looks like when you get to camp, when you put the pads on, and see if they've gotten physical enough, if they've done enough, and if they don't feel like they've done enough, i.e., say edge rusher, which is a position we've talked about ad nauseum this offseason. Let's say you get to camp and you don't feel like you've done enough there. You don't love what you've seen. Then maybe they do something, right? The guys are still out there. And I've said this, those guys are going to be there until the end of the summer, right? Sedarius Smith and Jadeveon Clowney and Von Miller, those guys are going to be there in August. Those guys will be there. At least one of those guys will be there in September. If not, multiple of those guys will be there in September. You don't have to rush, right? You know, obviously, if injuries occur for other teams, those names will come off the board a lot faster and they won't be available. But if teams stay relatively healthy, those guys will be there. So there's no rush. But if you like what you see in August, then they're not going to do anything. So right now, I think they're just going to stand pat. Don't think you're going to see them do anything. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, "It's been a minute." What's going on, JP? Yes, it has, man. Hope you enjoying the summer and enjoying time with the fam. Says, "Had to come and ask, is Giannis getting traded? And if so, where could he go? Or is he going to stay with the Bucks?" It feels like both KD and Giannis are going to be traded this offseason. That's what it feels like, to be honest with you. Feels like the momentum for Giannis getting traded is starting to reach a crescendo. Now, I will say, if you're Milwaukee, and you trade Giannis, you're not winning an NBA title anytime soon. Like, your only chance at winning a title comes through Giannis Antetokounmpo. So if you move on from him, which we've already established this, there is no such thing as getting equal value for an NBA star. You can't get equal value. So if you trade him, no matter what you get back, it won't be enough and it won't equal to what you got out of Giannis. The Giannis Dame Dillard experiment was a disaster. It did not work. Dame is now on the mend. So that's not stopping you from doing anything because you've seen enough of that to know that it's not going to yield you a championship. So the question now is, has that window closed? And if you think the window is closed with Giannis, then you should trade him. Because if you've learned nothing else, you should take notes from a team like Oklahoma City Thunder, like OKC, and get out in front of situations. Don't wait until you got a gun to your head, right? Nobody has done a better job of taking guys and rehabilitating their careers, or at least their value around the league, and then shipping them off and maximizing what they get for them. They did it with, now obviously this is to a lesser degree because these were guys that they drafted. This was homegrown talent, but they did it with KD, right? They moved on from KD. They moved on from James Harden, right? That was early stages though, right? The ones that I looked at and I said, wow, like, these guys are geniuses, was Paul George, right? They flipped Paul George for Shea, essentially, for SGA, right? And they've always rehabilitated guys. They did it with Paul George. They did it with Russ. They did it with CP3. And they used those guys to get themselves in a position to get more draft capital and put themselves in a position to get all of these assets. And then you look up at their roster, and that's how you end up with a Case and Wallace. That's how you end up with the kid from Maryland, right? That's how, and now you're in a position because you got all this cheap labor. You can go out and sign. Go out and sign Alex Caruso. You can go out and sign a Isaiah Hartenstein because you drafted Williams and all of these different guys. This is homegrown product. So if you're the Bucks, you got a chance to, if Mikal Bridges can net a team 4 first-round picks, pun intended, you got to see what you can get for Giannis Antetokounmpo. You got to see what you can get, man. See if you can't build this thing back up organically, because you remember, you're a small market team. You're a small market team. Nobody is coming to Milwaukee to sign a deal. You got to get it out the mud. So I could see Giannis being traded. I don't know where he's going to end up. I've heard San Antonio is a destination. They're trying to build something over there. Everybody wants to go to Miami because they don't really have a star there, but the Heat don't really have anything that anybody wants. So it's hard to get somebody out there, right? And I don't even know if they're in a position from a salary standpoint to match Giannis's salary. You needed a big piece like Jimmy Butler to do something like that. So I don't really know where he would end up. I haven't been because my team doesn't have a first-round pick, so I haven't really been overly concerning myself with, draft and off-season matters yet. I guess once the finals is done and you start to get into that wave of, free agency, or the draft rather, and then free agency, I guess I'll be a little bit more locked in because I know KD's going to get traded too. So we'll see. If I'm the Bucks, I have to assess my situation. And if I think the window with Giannis is closed, which I think it's closed, he shouldn't even won that first title, that one title. Literally, the stars aligned and everybody got injured, and it opened up the opportunity for him. And to his credit, he took over that final series and made sure they were down 0-2. So I don't want to sit here and act like, Giannis didn't go out and take that chip. But if teams stay healthy, if the Nets, for instance, if the Brooklyn Nets stay healthy, they don't even make it out of the first round. Like, what are we talking about? I think that was the first round series. They almost still lost to Kevin Durant pretty much by himself. If Kevin Durant's toe isn't on the line on that step back, I mean, they're gone in the first round. So I digress. I think he could be traded this offseason. I said all that to say I think he can get and will get traded this offseason. But I digress. All right, let's get to the comment section, and we'll grab one or two comments, and then we'll move on if they exist. Let's see. I don't really see anything here. So we'll move on, and we'll wrap up the show with our final segment, which is garbage time. Aaron Rodgers signed a 1-year, $10 million guaranteed $19.5 million deal, essentially. So 1 year, $19.5 million is what it can get up to in incentives, max value, but it's $10 million guaranteed for Aaron Rodgers. The Steelers all season has been very interesting, to say the least. A lot of people have had things to say about it, most notably former Steeler Ryan Clark, who was adamant that they did not need Aaron Rodgers, nor did they need Kirk Cousins. He thought both of them were washed, but I think if he had to choose between the two, he probably would have selected Rodgers because Cousins, in his mind, is done. I think both Cousins and Rodgers still have something left to give. I've been adamant about that, and I like the signing for the Steelers. Am I falling for the banana in the tailpipe this time? No. I mean, the last 2 years, I've been saying, well, look out for the Jets, look out for the Jets. Even though last year felt a little bit like that was ominous, right? How he didn't show up for the OTAs, and there was a little bit of dysfunction there. And I knew shit was really not going to work out when after week 1, they lost on a Monday night to the 49ers. And then head coach Robert Saleh acted like they just lost their first preseason game. Like, oh, yeah, this first game was really like a preseason game. No, dummy. A regular season NFL game is nothing like a preseason game. You don't throw away NFL regular season games because you don't know if it's going to come down to one game at the end of the season. You can't just say, well, yeah, this was like a preseason game. If you ask me how I feel leaving this game versus last year, we won the game in week 1 last year, which was the Aaron Rodgers injury game against Buffalo, versus losing this game but having Aaron Rodgers healthy. I tell you, I feel better this year. Okay, dum-dum. Good job putting yourself in a position. Mentality-wise, you just told your team it's okay to lose games. We're fine. Yeah, good luck with that, buddy. 2 months later, he's fired, right? Month and a half later, he's fired. That's a loser's mentality, right? So I knew they were in trouble, but I felt for the banana in the tailpipe heavy 2 years ago when Rodgers first signed it. I was like, man, this makes the Jets, and they went all out to surround Aaron Rodgers with guys he was comfortable with. It felt Tom Brady-esque. I remember I said that the Jets were whoring themselves to Aaron Rodgers. It was pretty nasty work. I mean, who are we kidding? They went out and signed Randall Cobb. They went out and signed the other receiver from Green Bay. Why can't I think of his name? I can see his damn face. Big, tall-ass receiver. Brought him on board. They went out and got 2 veteran tackles in Morgan Moses and the tackle from Dallas, who just retired, Tyron Smith. Like, it felt like, and they drafted Olufasanu. It just felt like that Tom Brady shit from 2020. So I was like, okay, yeah, I could see where this is going. But Rodgers ain't built like Brady. That's the difference. He ain't built like Brady. And we'll see. I think this Steelers team has a chance to be really good. And they're always in the mix with Tomlin. This confirms what I thought all along in my mind. I'm like, there had to be a handshake between Rodgers and the Steelers. Rodgers didn't want to be at the OTAs. And instead of making it a scene, because if he'd have signed this deal in March and then not participated in OTAs, it would have been the same thing that it was with the Jets, where it would have been a story. It would have been a story, and it would have been a distraction. And that's the last thing you need for a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who, at this point in his career, has his preferences. And one of them is to not be at OTAs at 41 years old. So instead of signing him, knowing that he didn't want to be at OTAs, creating a distraction and questions that you now have to answer, they just said, hey, tell you what we're going to do. We may take a quarterback, we may not. Just depends on how the board falls, right? But we're not reaching for a quarterback. We're not signing anybody else really in free agency. We're going to roll with what we got. We know that you want to sign with us. So we'll be here when you're ready. You know the deal. You know the parameters. You know what we offering. And they shook hands, and they was like, all right, I'll be here before mandatory minicamp. So the Steelers weren't tripping. That's why they were out there, and they were cool, calm, and collected throughout the draft, didn't reach for a quarterback. They drafted they drafted Will Rodgers, but who cares, right? He might be a solid backup for them, which is you need, right? I mean, he might be a solid NFL backup for them. He is not going to be the guy in Pittsburgh. I expect them to draft that guy next year when the draft is actually in Pittsburgh in 2026. So you get Rodgers, and now he's in mandatory minis with the team, which is, I think, what the plan was all along, which is why the Steelers were so comfortable with Mason Rudolph just chilling, right? Because they were like, man, y'all tripping. We already know what it is. So good for them. Does this make them a contender? I think Aaron Rodgers still has good football left in him. So they got better at running back, did the Steelers. They got better at receiver with DK, I believe. And they're going to get their second-round pick receiver back from Michigan this year. So I think they've got a legitimate shot to be a very improved team offensively. Defensively, they're solid. I still think there's room for growth and improvement there. But their defense is good enough to keep them in ball games. The offense just wasn't good enough to score. I don't know, man. I don't know. I still think they're at the bottom rung of the AFC playoff picture. Like, I don't put them up there with the likes of the Chiefs and the Bills and the Ravens and teams like that. They're not in that discussion for me. But they're at that bottom rung. They're hovering around that 7th seed with teams like Cincinnati and Houston. Well, Houston's a playoff team because they're going to probably win their division. But they're hovering around that 7th seed with the likes of the Dolphins and the Bengals and the Broncos and the Chargers and all those other teams that probably won't win their division. They're hovering around that 6-7 range of fighting for one of those back end of the playoff picture spots in the AFC. I do think they're in that conversation, which is where they've been the last, 2-3 years as they've made it as like 7 seeds and been bounced in the first round of the playoffs. I think they were the 5 seed last year, 6 seed, I think. The Bills were the 2 seed. The Ravens were the 3 seed, and they played the Ravens in the first round of playoffs, and they got bounced, so they were the 6 seed last year. And the year before that, I think they were the 7 seed, and they got bounced by the Bills, who were the 2 seed that year. So they always find a way to make it in. It's just anticlimactic. This could be different. We'll see. We'll talk more about the Steelers as this off season moves closer to the start of training camp. So let's get to the final super of, but Aaron Rodgers is a Pittsburgh Steeler. Not that you didn't already know that, but we hadn't really discussed it. And we will talk about that in greater detail when we talk about the Steelers 2025 outlook. They'll be the next team up in that series as we go through all 32 teams in the National Football League and what we think they will look like, or what I think they'll look like, or at least what my expectations are for them heading into the upcoming season and into training camp. So got a super chat here from my guy, Rosario Satar Pileski. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, thanks so much. I stole your banner in the background idea for my videos, LOL. You started that concept ages ago. Awesome idea. It's so easy and convenient to just put a banner up. I used to do the whole green screen thing, and it's just too much work. It really is. The lighting has to be perfect. The green screen needs to be really wrinkle free. It's just so many things. Then you gotta, toggle with the settings to make sure that it's right. Then if you lift your arm up and the lighting is slightly off, now your arm is invisible, but it's in there, but you can see it, but then you can't if you move off the screen. Now it's just too much. I hate the way that shit looked. And I just said, to hell with that. Just get a banner. You know what I mean? And now you don't have to deal with that shit. So I encourage anybody that is doing videos, if you want an easy solution to your background, just put a banner up. Put a banner up. So you didn't steal that idea. It's just common sense, honestly. It makes a lot of sense, and it's a lot easier. Just put a banner up. Unless you got a dope backdrop. You already got a dope backdrop. Like you're in a room, it's decorated. Cool. Do that, right? That's not my setup. So banner it is. But I love it, man. Continue to grow, Russ. And I am rooting for your continued success, man. I love the growth that you've had, and I want to see you continue to win, man. So shout out to you for sure. I think I called him Will Rodgers. Will Howard. Will Howard is his name. My bad. Will Howard. Called him Will Rodgers. Will Rodgers, Will Howard, same shit. Backup quarterback in the NFL. But let me put some respect on that man's name. He did win a national championship. So at a bare minimum, I should at least get his name right. It's Will Howard. So you're right. Shout out to Mill for that. Yeah. You get that man's name right. He won a national championship. Put some respect on his name. But that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 508th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I appreciate all of you guys and gals for joining me out there, man. I really, truly do appreciate each and every single one of y'all. Good look on the likes. Yeah, up over 120 likes, man. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Really appreciate y'all, man. And appreciate the love and support. If you're a Commanders fan, guess what? I'm going to be live later on tonight. Got some shit to talk about, right? Got some press conferences to discuss. I don't know, and I'm going to put y'all on to some game. 2 videos that you need. I'm going to give y'all some homework because I'm going to talk about it tonight. 2 videos that you need to have consumed by the time we get to tonight because I'm going to talk about them. You've got the video with Chris Sims talking about Jaden Daniels. It's a quick watch, like 6 minutes. He's talking about Jaden Daniels and ranking him number 5 in the league. Literally, he said everything that I said 4 months ago about Jaden Daniels. He said it yesterday in a video he uploaded. But Chris Sims, I can't stand Mike Florio, but when he separates himself from him and does his own thing, I rock with Chris Sims, man. Even when I don't agree, I can always understand where he's coming from. I respect his opinion. I do. And we're usually not that far off from each other, right? Game recognized game. And Jaden Daniels is looking hella familiar to Chris Sims, as he should. You need to watch that video. And then Dan Quinn was on the Green Light podcast, which is the Chris Long podcast, about 30 minutes, like a 29-minute watch. Go ahead, ingest that as well, because I'm going to talk about that tonight too, if you haven't already watched it. So watch all those. Frankie Louvu did an interview on the Washington YouTube channel, so check that out. That one-on-one. Trey Amos did his one-on-one on the podcast on the Washington channel, so check that out as well. So a lot of homework. If you haven't already checked a lot of this stuff out, go ahead and consume it, because I'm gonna be talking about a lot of these things later on this evening. Obviously, we're gonna talk about day one of mandatory minis, but among other things, check those videos out. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 508th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I look forward to joining you guys next time, whether that's tomorrow, whether that's Thursday. We should get in one more pod before the week expires, but whatever the case may be, I appreciate y'all for supporting the kid and showing up and showing out, and I look forward to chopping it up with you next time. Until then, I'm your man Louie T, signing off. Y'all take care. God bless, and